Welcome into episode 192 of the Skate Podcast. I'm Brian D. Felice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. We have a game 7. Round 1, the best regular season in the history of the NHL, and the Boston Bruins are going to game 7 against the Florida Panthers, which, look, every playoff series you can't take for granted. It's just not how they drew it up. They lost 7-5. It was 6-5 with an empty net down in Florida for the Panthers to force game 7. And believe it or not, Bridget and Scott, last night I was just so beside myself at just how this Bruins team just keeps finding ways to shoot themselves in the foot. And if we recorded last night, I probably would be acting like the sky is falling. Fortunately, we got a night's sleep to sleep on it. And I still think the sky is falling a little bit, but there are a lot of positives to take from this game, in my opinion, which we'll get into. But of course, there are a lot of negatives. So we'll dive into all of that. Bridget, Scott, just your initial reactions to this series going 7.
Well, I'm glad you got your beauty sleep, Brian, and that you're feeling a little bit better this morning.
I don't feel great, but there are some positives that
I
last night I wasn't thinking of.
I woke up feeling no better about what happened in game 6 because it's so uncharacteristic and there's just too much to talk about. Like, I know we go long sometimes, but I hope we don't we could talk about this game for a week probably. And lucky for the Bruins, it's right now we're recording, it's Saturday morning, and the talk shows don't start back up again. Like the main talk shows don't start back up again until after game 7, because I can just hear what's going on. And I feel like Adam Jones is just yelling takes at himself in the mirror this morning.
And he's going to call into Sunday Skate.
He's gonna, because him and I got into an argument 2 weeks ago at the beginning of the playoffs. I was on with them and we were in an argument because he said that Bruins goaltending is the thing he's most concerned about. And I told him he was stupid. And look where we are now. The blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes, I guess. The Bruins did this to themselves. It didn't make any sense to me that goaltending would be the biggest issue, right? The turnovers, maybe, the blips in focus. Sure, I sometimes that happens, and Florida putting on a lot of pressure, forcing mistakes. Could have seen all of that. Did not see the goaltending being this bad right now, and also thought we'd see Swayman by this point, and we probably should have in game 6. And Montgomery after the game said he thought about switching goaltenders, and he was asked when. He didn't really give a full answer, but he said after the first period at some point. So not sure exactly when, but Ullmark clearly didn't have it from the beginning. He could not hold on to a puck, and it ended up being a high-scoring game. Not surprisingly, with the way that he was playing, the Bruins gave up quite a bit of goals, and almost all of it self-inflicted.
Yeah, it's self-inflicted on and off the ice. On the ice, as we talked about after games 2 and game 5, and can talk about again, just brutal turnovers, brutal defensive zone play. 2 of them from Connor Clifton in game 6, leading to goals. Another shift where that Clifton-Forbort pairing got pinned in their own zone, and they're chasing the play. They're both below the goal line at one point. Guys open out front. McAvoy and Orlov got scrambly on one of the goals where they both end up kind of out of position. McAvoy allows Barkov to get inside position. He ends up being the goal scorer. Just so sloppy. The Ullmark clearly off his game. Got beat by a couple stoppable shots. Bridget, you mentioned he couldn't seem to squeeze the glove. Had several shots just bounce out of his glove that created some unnecessary chaos. I think it's now been a couple games that he hasn't looked very good. And then the off the ice stuff, the coaching, the personnel decisions. Yeah, I think not playing Swayman at some point in the series was a mistake. And, look, I obviously advocated for just keeping the rotation. Even if you don't do that, though, they've said all along they're comfortable with either goalie. They'd be okay with turning to Swayman. They have trust in him. He was just as good as Ullmark the second half of the season. and their actions haven't backed it up. There's been several opportunities to get Swayman into the series, and outside of 3 minutes after Ullmark, takes a misconduct for trying to fight Kachuk, Swayman hasn't seen the ice. He could have been in after game 2. He could have been in while Ullmark was clearly dealing with something. He was a game time decision at one point, going into game 3. You could have gone to Swayman up 3-1. You could have gone to him after game 5 when Ullmark had struggled. You could have gone to him at almost any point during game 6, make an in-game change. And now you leave yourself in this position where for game 7, it's either stick with Ullmark and pray to God that he turns this around, or you go to Swayman, who's coming in cold and has faced a grand total of 1 shot and goal in game action in the last 2 weeks. And there's plenty of other, personnel things there too. Why did Grizzly get pulled? Why go back to a Forbort-Clifton pairing that struggled in games 1 and 2 and struggled again in game 6? Why is Trent Frederic, your 6th leading goal scorer for the season, a healthy scratch 2 games in a row? Like, lots to discuss, but yeah, a lot of it self-inflicted. And I feel like they've, on the goaltending part in particular, they've kind of backed themselves into a corner by not being willing to make a change earlier.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Scott, the predicament that they're in for going into game 7. Like, there's so many people, I think the majority of people would rationally say, based on Ullmark's performance the last couple of games, and let's face it, game 5, I'm not trying to pin a 60-plus minute game on one player, but that was a game-costing mistake in game 5. You score 5 goals on the road or in any environment in the playoffs, you should win that goddamn game. And he gives up 6 goals last night. He is absolutely the biggest reason that this is going 7 games right now, straight up. But so, yeah, so like, do you just hope that he's ready to go for game 7? Like, rationally, you want to go Swayman, but the only reason you wouldn't go Swayman is for the reason you said. He hasn't played. So to sit on the bench for an entire series and then your first start is game 7, good luck, pal. That's a tougher call to make than it should be, because based off of Ullmark's play, it should be an easy decision. Go to Swayman, considering that he's a very good goalie as well. But because he hasn't played, it makes it tougher. And we're gonna get to that. Yeah, Bridget, do you want to follow up on that?
There's a lot of stuff there.
There's so
too,
much to go off of.
Because it is a tough call, because like you mentioned, he hasn't played in a while. But then what if, like, so if he plays bad, the season is over. If he plays well, what do you do next series?
You ride the guy. Oh yeah.
So you open yourself up to so much criticism for how you handled it, no matter what goal you choose for game 7. Right? No matter what. And if you're Ullmark, he had some more little comments after the game where someone asked him if feeling okay. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. And that's how he is. Like we said, that's how he is. Now, did that piss people off? I'm sure it did. But anyhow, it did kind of feel like wanting to brush it off, but almost in a way that was not taking accountability. So that's probably where some people have, are able to say, okay, I don't know why he's acting like this. But either way, you're in a bad position, because what do you do for Ullmark's mental sake and to preserve his whatever, like his own mental state and also like reputation or whatever you want to say? Do you have to say he's injured in order to make the switch, or can you just go, it was just bad? Like, I feel like almost they will want to go with, oh, he's not 100%, and then you open yourself up to why you're playing a goalie that's not 100%. So it's a whole drama. Yeah,
you just say you're going with you're making the decision you think gives you the best chance to win. You pull a Belichick. Like, it's the playoffs. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to give us details. You don't have to.
And they haven't.
You don't have to tell me how injured Ullmark is or break down every single goal he gave up. You just say, we're going with Swayman. We think he gives us the best chance. That's it. Like, I would love if Jim Montgomery or even Goalie Bob came out and like gave us a ton of detail and I could write 4 stories off it. But for the sake of like the team and what they're doing going into game 7, they don't have to explain any of that to us. So like, I don't really care how they justify it or what explanation they give. Like, you just have to make the decision that you think gives you the best chance. And because Swayman hasn't played, like that is an actual discussion. Brian, you're right. Like logically, you'd be like, Ullmark has had 2 straight bad games. Of course, you'd go to the other guy. But that other guy, like I said, has faced 1 shot and goal in a game in 2 weeks. So just to get it out there now, like I would go with Swayman. That would be my call.
Mm-hmm.
That I understand there's probably some rust, but look, he's been in practice. He's at least been facing shots. Like obviously, it's very different than a game, but I don't think you can risk going with Ullmark again. I think whether it's physical, mental, combination of both, he clearly looks worn down. His play has declined as the series has gone on. I'm not taking the risk of just crossing my fingers and hoping he figures it out for Game 7. Like I think you have to make the switch, because if you go down, if you play Ullmark again and he struggles again and now your season's over, like to me that would be the hardest decision to explain. Is how did you had this other goalie who was just as good for over half the season? How did you just go down in the first round without even giving him a chance, without even getting him into any of the games? Like that would be, I don't think you could possibly justify that.
I just feel I understand that I definitely feel a little bit uneasy putting Swayman into a Game 7 environment where it's win or go home and he hasn't played in a while. There is unease there for me, but there is far more unease for me putting Ullmark back in the net. I am 100% with you, Scott. I want Swayman in there. I also think Swayman's one of those goalies who I think he really relishes like the challenge of doing something great and being in that high pressure situation.
He's one of those crazy goalies that likes shootouts.
He loves shootouts. I just like I can't watch this Bruins team have the season that they did and go into Game 7 with Ullmark in net, because I have zero confidence in him. And maybe he's healthy, maybe he's not. I will tell you this. The Florida Panthers scored 6 goals on him last night. Of course, the 7th goal was an empty netter. I'm being generous here in saying that at least 4 of them I hated. They were bad goals to give up. They were shots from distance. They were shots that weren't like that great. They weren't that. I mean, the Montour goal, the first goal of the game was a bad goal to give up. The 6th goal of the game was a bad goal to give up. Yes, there was bad coverage down low on some of the Kachuk goals and this and that. But again, I'm being generous. I might even say 5 of the 6 goals were bad. And I might say all 6 goals were bad. Like he could have stopped all 6 of those. Like even the Barkov one, he's scrambling again. There was bad coverage in front of him. I admit that, but he was absolutely terrible. Terrible. This is one of those games where there's so much on my mind and so much on your minds. I'm getting like scrambled egg brain because I just want to. There's so many things I want to talk about. The good news is we have plenty of time to do so.
Ryan, you maybe just go back to bed for a second.
I've been up since 6 a.m. I've been I really have been. I've been up since 5:30 this morning actually. So I've had plenty of time to stew on this. But Bridget, at the risk of me rambling too much on Ullmark and Swayman, what would you do for Game 7?
Swayman,
Okay.
absolutely. Swayman should have been in Game 6 at some point. And yeah, so it has to be Swayman, right? I can't find a way to justify Ullmark the way that he's been playing. I mean, and I know you can go, oh, Vezina Trophy winner, whatever you want to say, like he was the clear number 1 going into the playoffs, but we always said 1A, 1B. And I do think Swayman has the right personality to come in and take care of things. He has, I would say he has a pretty different personality than Ullmark, where he's kind of, I mean, he's not snarky or anything like that. He's calm. He's very calm. And I feel like they need that right now. They need to know that obviously they've been making a lot of mistakes. They need to know the goalie back there can stop a few of their mistakes from going into the back of the net. So I say Swayman as well.
Yeah. And like if we look at recent history with the Bruins in the playoffs and potential goalie switches, I know new coach, obviously, right? Jim Montgomery, this is the first time he's gone through it, but goalie coach Bob Essenza has been there for all of it. And both Montgomery and Cassie before him often just defer to Essenza. So you can go back 2 years to when Tuukka Rask is banged up, clearly doesn't look like himself, is struggling a little bit against the Islanders, and the Bruins stuck with him. They didn't go to Swayman. Swayman at that point was a rookie. He had played well in the regular season, but was inexperienced. Last year, we saw them willing to make a change. Ullmark doesn't look great in the first 2 games against Carolina. They go to Swayman. Now, that change happens between game 2 and 3, not game 6 and 7. So it is a totally different beast in that sense. But it's fascinating because like both are on goalie Bob's record in recent years. One example of him probably sticking with his guy too long. Another where he was willing to make a change. So it's going to be fascinating. Like I think if you look at last year and you're like, okay, 2 tough starts in a row for Ullmark led to the switch to Swayman. Well, 2 tough starts in a row for Ullmark, even though it's a game 7, to me should lead to the switch to Swayman. Like I get wanting to go back to him after 1. I mean, look, they went back to him for game 3 after a tough game 2, and it paid off. Ullmark played really well games 3 and 4 in Florida, and they get 2 wins. So in that sense, yeah, I would have gone to Swayman after game 5, but I understand at least understand where they were coming from going back to him for game 6, because they could point and say, well, look, we already showed faith in him earlier in this series and he rewarded us. Let's show faith again. But now it's been 2 games in a row. To me, you have to make the switch now.
Yeah, and like as I think about last night, like the Reinhart goal, I think on the power play, he was all alone in the slot. I won't fault Ullmark for that one. And the Barkov one was a scramble. I still think he went a little Tim Thomas for my liking in that. But those 2 goals, I will not solely blame Ullmark for it, especially the Reinhart goal. The other 4, yes, there were breakdowns, yes, there were giveaways, but that was just brutal. And I just feel like this series should have been over in 5. I mean, who knows what happens in game 5 if that blunder doesn't happen? Like the Bruins had the momentum in the third period. What I don't like about this team right now is that their situational hockey is brutal, absolutely brutal. They're doing everything in their power outside of games 3 and 4 to lose this series. They're coughing the puck up. They're careless, but situationally, the Panthers are winning the series every time that there's that one of the teams punches the other and the other one punches back. The Panthers get that final blow. It's not even just the amount of goals Ullmark gave up and the team gave up. It's when they gave them up. You tie the game, you give it back, you give them the lead back. You take the lead, it's tied 20 seconds later. That cannot happen. And there were other brainless mistakes too outside of Clifton and Ullmark, like Lindholm. You just get a 5-4 lead on a shorthanded goal, and you have nobody on you, and you just nonchalant clear the puck over the glass by about 10 feet. What do you and then they score on the power play, tie the game. He's been brutal. I don't care what anybody says about the underlying analytics. Lindholm has been not great. He's had good moments. I'm sure he has some good analytics to back up to kind of what I'm saying, but he has not been the guy that they need him to be. I'll just put it that way.
To me, the Lindholm Carlo pairing is still the least of my concerns, honestly. Like they're at least not getting scored on. Yes, I would like to see Lindholm do more offensively, but at least that pairing isn't giving up much. And Lindholm's clear over the glass aside, I don't think they're making the completely boneheaded turnovers that other pairings are making. I thought, like I mentioned, McAvoy and Orlov getting scrambly. I think McAvoy's obviously been really good in most of this series. Orlov has been very up and down, and I thought Game 6 was a down game for him. And Clifton and Forbort just not good enough. They've been together 3 games in this series and have been bad in all 3. Like I don't get going back to them. I don't know what Montgomery's looking for there. Like before the game, on Twitter, I put it kindly saying you're conceding too much defensive zone time by putting that pairing together. Like you're basically just accepting that most of their shifts are going to be in the D zone. And as you can say, like, oh, well, we trust them to make the right plays or whatever. Well, they haven't earned that trust in this series. And you're against a team like Florida that gets right on top of you, that's fast and aggressive and physical. Like, you're opening yourself up to the possibility of more mistakes. The more time you spend in your zone, the more chances that you're giving the Panthers to get on top of you and force those turnovers. And then the Bruins are committing turnovers even when they're not right on top of them. Like, it's so frustrating. And yeah, so like I didn't get that move. And there's plenty of other stuff we can talk about. Forwards up front, like I thought Krejci looked pretty solid in his turn. I thought that was the Bruins' best one.
Can I just jump in before we go to Krejci?
Yeah.
So in terms of the defensemen, I feel like the one move that Montgomery made during the series that made a positive difference was when he brought Grzelcyk in, and then he put Grzelcyk right back out. And the reason why you bring Grzelcyk in was obvious, and it was transition and puck moving, and we know what kind of defenseman Grzelcyk is. And that McAvoy-Grzelcyk pair has been good. So that one change, I feel like, was the best change he made, and then he reverses it. And not saying, we said last podcast, oh, probably time to get Clifton in, but we didn't see that Clifton. We saw Cliffy Hockey, the bad version, as he would say, because he told us he doesn't like that nickname because the connotations it used to have, which were the ill-advised penalties, the turnovers, that's what we saw from him.
Being too aggressive, like.
Yes.
Well, Bridget, we also made that comment with the asterisk that was unspoken that, like, yeah, we want Clifton back in, but not at the expense of Grzelcyk. We want him back in at the expense of Forbert.
Yes. Yeah. And that this is a move that was just clearly from the beginning didn't work. I mean, he gets a charging penalty. He had 2 failed clears that led to goals. That pair was on the ice for a few of the goals, at least 2, like I said. I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure it was more. And it was just an all-around rough night. I would say Ullmark was very clearly a rough night for him, and Clifton as well. Probably 2 of the biggest culprits in the loss.
Why do you guys think he took Grzelcyk out? Because I was trying to figure this out, and one thing that came to mind is, like, were they pinning that overtime turnover on Grzelcyk? Like, in their minds, did Grzelcyk not communicate well enough? And is that why? Because, like, I didn't see anything else in Game 5 where I was like, boy, Grzelcyk looks rough out there. Like, you might have to sit him down. So I was trying to think, like, is it just that mistake, or is there some other reason for it? Because at no point was I thinking, that might be a lineup switch you have to make. Like, I don't know. Maybe I missed something, but I didn't think Grzelcyk played poorly.
He didn't. And while the rest of the world was saying that play should be mainly on Ullmark, I did hear, and it may have been on EEI radio, but somebody, I'm not sure if it was on the morning show, if Greg said something, or somebody heard something from somebody that internally the Bruins viewed that as more of a blunder on Grzelcyk because of what you said, Scott, like a lack of communication. And if that's why they sat him out, because of something that really should, I mean, come on, the goalie has to be responsible for the goalie playing the puck in that situation. But I mean, that's all I can think of, Scott. Other than that blunder, to your point, I thought he was playing well.
I think Greg does know someone in Grzelcyk's camp. If I recall correctly, Greg has had other insights or like reports or whatever about stuff that involved Grzelcyk.
Yeah, Greg was the one who reported last year, I think, that, like, Cassidy had gone on Grzelcyk and Bergeron had to step in. So, yeah, Brian, I do know what you're talking about. I think that was Greg. I think it was that show.
I just don't know why, to your comment on past episodes, like, the best 5-on-5 D pairs that they could have, the best 6 guys for them would be in no particular order, but McAvoy, Lindholm, Orlov, Carlo, Clifton, and Grzelcyk. I just don't understand I understand, and I'm trying not to be hypocritical because there have been points throughout this podcast in the recent weeks where I've wanted somebody's number in the lineup, like Forbert, for example, earlier on in the series, or Grizzly at other points. And last episode, I wanted Clifton in Game 6. But every time that Montgomery ends up putting somebody in that we actually want him to put in, he's taking somebody else out that we wanted to stay in. And I was so like annoyed when I saw that Clifton and Forbert were the pairing instead of like Clifton and Grizzly or whomever. I didn't want Clifton and Forbert together, and I like whatever. So
and the Frederic thing also puzzles me.
Well, and to that point, Bridget, so Frederic comes out because Krejci's back in the lineup last game, right? So Frederic comes out, Foligno stays in, and I wanted to ask you guys, that second giveaway that led to a goal by Clifton, the 6-5 ultimate game-winning goal, I definitely think Clifton, when the puck's on your stick and you don't have that many people on you, you got to make sure it gets out 100%. And I think he prematurely dished it to Foligno with somebody on Foligno's back. So I would put a lot of the onus on Clifton, but I think Foligno deserves some significant blame there too, because the puck was on his stick and he did not protect it at all. And next, like the pass from Clifton was tape to Foligno. Would I have recommended that pass in that moment of time? Not necessarily, but things happen quick, and that's a play that's a pass that happens all the time. I mean, I think Clifton should have taken the ice that was given to him, or at the very least, lost it out of the zone, make sure it gets out. He didn't. He gave it to Foligno, but Foligno coughed it right up. He was unaware of who was on his back, and that puck did hit his tape blade on his forehand. So I feel like Clifton is being a little bit of the scapegoat there, which he should be, but I think Foligno should wear some of that too.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually, like, next chance where I'm not talking, I want to look at the replay, because I was wondering, like, if Foligno had a chance to come down further in the zone, and I want to watch to see, like, if he just came off the bench and to the blue line as far as he could get, that's one thing. But like, if he just posted up there, that's exactly where the defenseman's going to be to try to keep it in. So I was wondering, like, did he have a chance to come down the wall at all? But either way, yeah, it seemed like, the safe play for Foligno would have been just chip that, like, just, get your stick on it, whack it further, make sure it gets out of the zone. And, I don't know if he was trying to catch the pass, handle it, whatever. But yeah, he obviously, like, he had a defenseman right on him, and defenseman wins the battle. The puck stays in the zone. So definitely fault on both. I do still put most of it on Clifton, because it's up to him to recognize the situation and realize there's a guy right on Foligno, and that's not a safe pass. But yeah, I agree. Like, Foligno could have done more as well.
And not even just like a mistake, like not even just taking him out for a mistake. I think Frederic has more he can give than Foligno does in this series, because both Foligno and him are physical, and they can play that style of game. So that's the same. But Frederic plays sometimes on the penalty kill. Frederic can play more minutes. Foligno, we mentioned last game, didn't have all that much time on ice. Frederic can play on the fourth line, or if you need to shuffle him around, he can play with Coyle. You have a guy that you can move to more places and expect to do more things and possess. I think his puck possession is better than Foligno's. I think he is pretty strong when he has the puck. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of reasons why Frederic should have stayed in. And I know it's a tough call, because, you're talking about taking out Foligno, who's a veteran, and that you count on him for some of the stuff on the bench, the same way you would for Bergeron. But I just feel like Frederic gives you more options, and he was getting under people's skin, and he was taking Kachuk off his game at times, and he was playing that game right back with some of the agitators for Florida in the early games in the series. So I think I've said nothing but positive things about Frederic for the most part this series, and he ends up out of the lineup. I think Foligno would be the natural one to take out at this point. But we're talking about more adjustments based off of past mistakes and everything. And the only problem is now it's a game 7 and your adjustments better work. Otherwise, we're talking in a post an end of the season next podcast, and we're going to be talking about, this adjustment and that adjustment and should have done this. I don't know.
Yeah. And so I did just rewatch that goal. Foligno definitely had a chance to come further down the wall. I don't really know why he was so high in the zone on that. So definitely plenty of blame there. The refs also missed a trip right before that. Shouldn't have mattered. Bruins still should have made the clean play, but anyways.
Do you guys want to switch over to the annoying part about games like this is obviously so many goals. There were positives that you could see throughout the game, but then in the post game, nobody wants to talk about that. Like Pastrnak was asked about his crazy sick goal that he put between his legs, and Pastrnak has 2 goals, Bertuzzi has 2 goals, DeBrusk has a good goal. It's just all of that got buried by the mistakes and the loss.
Yeah, just quickly before we get to some of those on Frederic versus Foligno, I get the argument of Foligno's a veteran leader and you want him on the bench, but it reminds me of the whole David Backes debate in 2019 of just his presence helps you, and it's well, it really hasn't. Those playoffs had gone on long enough, that series had gone on long enough that I think you had a pretty good idea of what David Backes could bring at that point. And there wasn't going to be some magic formula of him giving a speech on the bench. And it's not a direct one-to-one comparison. I think Foligno, when he's been healthy this year, has brought more to the table. But I think he's struggled the last couple games. I thought it seemed like he started to get going game 3, maybe game 4, where he found a little bit of the speed that maybe wasn't there right away when he returned from the injury, but I don't think he's been much of a factor the last couple games. So I wouldn't hesitate to make that change. Again, Frederic had a really good season. I like what he brings. He has more offensive upside. Yeah, he's not, the wily veteran. Maybe he might not even be quite as physical as Foligno, but I think he should be in the lineup. Again, he was 6th on your team in goals this season. If you go down with him sitting the last 3 games, that's a very fair, not second guess because we first guessed it, but I would definitely be getting him back in.
So off the top, and I would too. I mean, I think that you bring up David Backes. I still remember at the time thinking that Game 7 at home, Stanley Cup Finals against his former team that he was the captain for. I just remember thinking I don't know, he could seem like the kind of guy that just gets a goal off his skate in a Game 7 because he went to the right area. So I am trepidatious sometimes about leaving out a veteran like that who's very, very experienced and might be just the guy to get that dirty, lucky goal in a tight checking Game 7. But to that point, I don't know. I do definitely see Frederic being an all around better contributor. Again, thing with him is it's similar to Swayman, not nearly as similar, I guess, but he's been out a couple games here, so will he be rusty? Whatever. But yeah, I mean, I'm for that. But off the top, I mentioned a little bit of optimism because there were some positives, and we're not done with the negatives yet. So listeners, don't go away if you want us to just keep crapping on them. Oh no. There's plenty to go over still. But Bridget, you mentioned David Pasternak's 2 goals, Tyler Bertuzzi's 2 goals. So obviously a huge positive I was referring to was David Pastrnak kind of Babe Ruth calling his shot in the media scrum before Game 6, and he went out there and had 2 beautiful highlight. Well, the second wasn't a highlight reel goal, but it was a good finish. But the first one was a thing of absolute beauty. And Tyler Bertuzzi made up for his blunder in Game 5, and he had 2 goals. And another positive for me is that the Bruins, because offensively, the Bruins clearly offensively did enough to win that game, and that's excluding the goal from Brandon Carl that got taken off the board because of the Jake DeBrusk hand pass, which, let's just say it now, as annoying as it is, as much as it didn't affect the play, it's if the puck hits your glove in any way, shape, or form in the offensive zone, they're gonna call it a hand pass. You get into intent, and maybe intent is in the rule book. I don't know, but I knew that was coming off the board when I saw that his glove. But in any event, the Bruins, if you want to include that Carlo goal, they found a way to get 6 pucks past Bobrovsky. Obviously, only 5 counted. And what's even better is that they were able to do it in all facets of the game: shorthanded, penalty, power play, and 5-on-5. And the power play went 3 for 4, and it wasn't a fluky 3 for 4. Like earlier on in the series, we had mentioned, okay, yeah, they went 2 for 4, but there were goals in transition, and the rest of the power play outside of those goals looked like crap. The power play looked dangerous in Game 6, and they went 3 for 4, and that's a major positive for me going into Game 7. It looks like the Bruins may have found something and some personnel to go with in Game 7.
Yeah, definitely. But I thought the power play had started to show some signs where like they're at least getting better entries and getting into the zone. Game 6, you saw good entries and good in zone setups, movement. Like you said, the 3 goals, which is kind of just another reason like it's so frustrating that they lost. This, like you won the special teams. Like you got 3 power play goals. You got a shorthanded goal. Yes, you gave up 2 power play goals as well, but you still end up with +2 special teams, and they were the best. The Bruins are the best 5-on-5 team in the NHL all season in terms of goal differential. So to lose a game at 5-on-5 for not the first time in the series is really frustrating to see. But yeah, Pastrnak getting going, huge. I wasn't, as we talked about in the last podcast, like I was not as down on him as a lot of people. I thought he had to be better, of course, but I didn't like him being called invisible. Like I didn't totally agree with that assessment. But regardless, he's a goal scorer. So unless he's scoring goals, it's fair to criticize him. So big to see him get going. You're right, he did kind of call his own shot. Although, like if you listen to the audio, it wasn't like the most confident calling of his own shot. He kind of just like slipped it in there, where it's like, and it's gonna be tomorrow, but it was like, but he at the very least, like he clearly wasn't worried. He was straight up asked if he was frustrated. He said no. Like he admitted he had to shoot more,
Which he
and
did.
work to get better shots because he had gotten a lot of shots blocked. But he seemed to have like a good feel of like what he had to do. Like he wasn't panicking. It wasn't like throwing his arms up like, I have no idea what to do. Like they're just taking me out. It was like, no, just got to work a little harder to open up shooting lanes and be a little more aggressive. And I think you saw that not just on the 2 power play goals, but like I said, I thought that line, him, Krejci, and Zacha, the reunited check line, I thought was their best line at 5-on-5. They created the most chances by far of any of their lines. So that was encouraging to see. Like I said, Krejci was part of that. He looked maybe not vintage Krejci, maybe not, true playoff Krejci quite yet, but he definitely looked better than games 1 and 2. So it seemed like the rest and recovery time did him pretty well.
Now, do you guys think that was Pasta's like prettiest goal of the season? Because it's got to be up there.
Probably.
I can't think of. I'm sure I'm forgetting something that's comparable, but that was.
He had one in Seattle where he danced on the road in Seattle. He danced somebody pretty good coming down the left wing boards.
I think it was Adam Larson. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Pasta was just so fast. He goes at it.
Yeah.
I didn't even have time to think about it. I was just doing it pretty much is what he was saying, and he said, "I don't think I've ever," because he also lifted it like incredibly. Like he was able to lift it pretty high. He's like, "I don't think I've ever like roofed one of those before." Like
short
I've
side
tried it
too.
before, but
short side, top shelf. I think what you're trying to describe, Bridget, which is like what I was thinking too. It's like, what's the right word for it? It was just so fluid. It was I think you used the word fast, but like the way he did it, it was just so fluid, so smooth, so quick. It's like
he didn't think about it, he just did it.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was great to see. Great to see. And then what was the power play unit that was really clicking was McAvoy up top with Bertuzzi net front, Bergeron in the bumper, and then Marchand and Pastrnak moving up and down the flank. So clearly the biggest difference there was Lindholm wasn't back there. I know they've been interchangeable throughout the series, but that was the 5-man unit when it just was really clicking last night.
Yeah, and I think the other changes normally during the regular season, it was DeBrusk at the net front of that unit. And, there were times that DeBrusk was really good there, but Bertuzzi definitely brings a little bit different of an element, in particular the playmaking in close, because we've seen this a few times now where he gets that puck right on top of the crease and makes that backhand pass, almost no look, over to Pastrnak. And DeBrusk brings plenty of DeBrusk is really good on retrievals. He'll battle at the net. We've seen him score on like stuff attempts before, kind of like the one Tkachuk scored on Ullmark. But that playmaking out of that net front spot from Bertuzzi is different and unique, because a lot of the guys that get put net front are bigger bodies and they're just there for tips and rebounds. It's rare to have someone who can make good passes out of that spot to set up goals. So definitely love him there, especially the chemistry with Pastrnak, able to get it over to him. So yeah, that unit has looked good, and obviously, keep that together going forward.
Yeah, that second unit didn't even really get a lot of ice time because they were scoring with that first unit before the second unit could even get out. So I feel like we watched mostly just first unit power play because they were so effective. They didn't even need to send anybody else out after. So to the Bertuzzi stuff, he on that pass, I've said this, he loves that freaking no-look backhand pass, and it can work when you're right near the opposition goalie. And go ahead. It looks pretty when you do it over there. Just don't get
good on the power play, bad in your own zone.
Yeah, can we just say this is an offensive zone pass and that's it? And really, you have to be pretty deep down near the net. Don't do it at the It looks good when it works. And you know what? I'm fine with them doing it there because the risk of it going wrong is so much less when that's the area on the ice you're doing it. And he fixed his mistakes. I think he cleaned up from the mistakes he had been making in games 4 and 5. Was it 4 and 5? I don't know. There were a few different games where he was making some turnovers that were questionable. I think he cleaned that up. And we got to see that line, the mythical, we didn't know if it was even real, line with Hall and Coyle, and it worked fine. So, and like you mentioned, you like to see him with Pastrnak. Well, they connect on the power play.
Yeah, and that's something to think about maybe going forward into future seasons. But we'll see what Don Sweeney tries to do in the offseason. I want to get a sense of how you guys feel now, because I'm all year, especially towards the last month of the season when we knew playoffs were approaching, the sentiment was among all of us, I'll be honest, but the sentiment was I just can't see this Bruins team losing 4 of 7 games. They had lost 3 times in a row, once all year. They never they always found a way to respond. And for a team to do that against this Bruins team seemed insurmountable, especially in the earlier rounds, right? But I ask you guys now.
I also don't think they've ever lost this season 3 home games in a row.
Well, hopefully that's not the case.
Because that would be what would have to happen, because it would be game 2, game 5, and if they lose game 7, then that would be 3 home games in a row. That I doubt they've done, because just think about how few losses they have at home this year.
So I have my reasons why I'm still confident that they'll win game 7. I have my reasons for optimism, but I also have my reasons for skepticism, and I kind of want to get a sense of how you guys are feeling. Do you feel now that this Bruins team can indeed lose 4 games in 7? And what worries me the most, and if you hear any noise, it's just my ice machine is just going crazy in my fridge. So please be quiet. I'm recording a podcast. Thank you. What concerns me for this Bruins team right now is that they've just been so close multiple times now at winning this series. You talk about the Brad Marchand breakaway, literally in the final second of game 5 that could have won the series. You talk about overtime in game 5 where they had a chance to win the series. You talk about being up by a goal twice in the third period or once in the third period in games. So, and twice on the Pastrnak power play goal and then the DeBrusk shorthanded goal.
Mhm.
And it's like both of those goals, you see the Bruins, how they celebrate those goals. It was like they just felt such joy and like they were so alleviated because they were like, all right, we got the lead. We just got to lock it down now for whatever it was, 12 minutes when Pastrnak scored or 8 minutes when DeBrusk scored. Like it was so within their reach. And you could tell how excited they were that they were just this close to doing it. That's a devastating way to lose. And to come back home now, they're going to say all the right things in the locker room. They're going to be ready to go. But you talk about momentum in a playoff series, it's all with Florida right now. And how do you guys as individuals feel going into this game 7?
I'm going to be honest, I don't feel good. I'm trying to track my feelings over the course of this weekend. Last night after the game, going to bed, felt really bad looking ahead to Sunday. I woke up this morning. I still feel bad. Like it just it does not feel right.
These wounds don't heal overnight, Scott.
I did not see this team making this many mistakes, getting pushed to the brink by the Panthers, not being able to close out when they were up 3-1. And the personnel changes not working. Montgomery seemingly losing the magic touch he had all season. You know, I know we talked about like all the line changes he made before game 5 and how those didn't work, and he switched in half a period. The defensive decisions, sticking with Ullmark too long, backing yourself into a corner there. Like Florida has all the momentum. Florida has everything going. Like it's clicking for them. Their best player, Matthew Tkachuk, in my opinion, has been the best player in the series. Bobrovsky was obviously really good in game 5, not very good in game 6, but still better than Ullmark. He's been better than Ullmark the last 2 games, in total. And that's one thing that's amazing. I was looking up like save percentage for the series now is basically even. It's basically exactly even. I did not think at any point when we were previewing this series that goaltending would be even. And after seeing like Alex Lyons struggle early on, like I thought that was such a huge advantage for the Bruins. It should have been such a huge advantage for them, and it's now been a stalemate.
Do you think it's a pressure thing? Do you think this is like a cracking under pressure situation?
It might be. I mean, yeah, like if you're succumbing to pressure, you might be more likely to make mistakes for sure. So that could be part of it. In which case, like I don't understand why they would feel that though. Like you're up 3-1. You won 2 games without Bergeron and Krejci in the lineup. Like how the pressure's definitely on now that they're going to a game 7. Absolutely. Like all the pressure in the world is on them Sunday, and how they deal with that is going to be incredibly fascinating to watch. But there shouldn't have been pressure for game 5. There shouldn't have even been that much pressure for game 6. You're still up 3-2, and you're going into a building where you've already won twice. Like if it is pressure, to me, it's up to this point, it's pressure that they've put on themselves without needing to really. But now the pressure is very real. Like now all like the weight of history and the season and
the last
what it would mean for the future and the potential end of careers for Bergeron and Krejci, like that's all on the table now, and they're gonna feel. I would assume they're gonna feel all of it. Like it's at least gonna enter their heads. So how they deal with that on Sunday is going to be unbelievably interesting to watch.
Yeah, well, and do you think maybe this is where you go, okay, well, that home ice advantage really, this could be a situation where the home ice advantage does the trick, and that's why you go and win the division, and that's the advantage you have rather than the curse of being the President's Trophy winner, is that you have home ice advantage throughout the playoffs. And in game 7 is where you really notice that home ice advantage for the most part. And they've been so good at home all season. It just not been the same in the playoffs. And Montgomery said almost in a bewildered way, playoffs is a different beast. And there was a time in the middle of the game, he was throwing stuff on the bench, which we haven't seen. He lost his cool. And, he didn't throw anyone really into the bus after the game, which is a difference between Cassidy might have called out Clifton, or you never know. But Cassidy's already on to the next round, by the way. And it just was, I don't know about you, Scott. I mean, Scott and I are at most, Scott, maybe he's been at all, maybe not. Actually, you were sick one time. Me and Scott are at most of the Bruins home games. And I do not recall any other times during the regular season where they looked like this. And it was like almost like I don't even know what I'm watching. Especially in that game too. And that just kind of feels like where we're at right now. It's like, I'm not sure what I'm watching. I'm not sure what Bruins team this was, because it didn't show really at all like that, or even just like a period of that, maybe here and there. But in 82 games, this isn't who they were. So that's the problem. And that's why I don't trust going into game 7, because we know what they can be, but they haven't in this series. And you give Florida a little bit of credit with the pressure and that they've been able to put on. And they were clearly a better team than the Penguins, because the Penguins would not have pushed 7. I highly doubt. This series would have been, I might have predicted a sweep if it were Penguins. Maybe the Bruins should have let the Penguins beat them for the last meeting of the season, because then this would be Bruins Penguins right now. Just food for thought. But yeah, I'm not entirely confident. No, I do feel a lot better if Swayman is the goalie. I will tell you, like, the fact that if we find out before the game at some point Saturday, Sunday, as soon as I find out it's Swayman, I'll feel a little better.
Yeah, I mean, the key word that you mentioned, Bridget, that stuck out to me was regular season. Like that's why it's such a different, nothing matters in the regular season. The only thing that matters about the regular season is winning enough games to get you into the playoffs. And the reason that there's probably a President's Trophy curse isn't because the teams that win the President's Trophy aren't good teams, don't have the best rosters. It's that when you get that much of a lead in the regular season, simply put, the games down the stretch don't matter. They don't matter to you. You're in the playoffs. You know you're in the playoffs. Florida has been playing with a desperation for months now that no matter how much the Bruins say the right things and want to play like the games still matter and want to keep good habits, nothing can emulate desperation. Nothing. And Florida's been playing with that, trying to make the playoffs for months. The Bruins, as much as they've been saying, we want to keep playing the right way, we want to keep looking at small goals ahead of us to keep themselves invested, their playoff hopes were never on the line, ever. So they've been in first place since the beginning of the season. And you see that, like, they're tightening up and they're playing careless. And yeah, I don't feel, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is that I don't feel good going into this game. The good news is that usually when I feel that way, the Bruins actually do what I'm hoping doesn't happen, and they find a way to win. But, like, do you guys remember? I think it was like during our series preview, I mentioned something like what scares me is that if the Bruins go down a couple games or whatever, or they're in a bad situation, like, they can go out there and play a perfect game and still find a way to lose, because that's just the way hockey is sometimes. I can very much see the Bruins go out in game 7 and dominate. I can see them out shooting Florida 45-26. And
game 5 they outshot heavily.
Yeah. And I can see Bobrovsky just standing on his head. I can see a power play goal for Tkachuk in the middle of the second period that takes the crowd out of it. And then I can see a tense Bruins team in the third doing everything that they can do to empty the kitchen sink to try to tie the game. And what's unfortunate now is that the Bruins have made themselves vulnerable to this. They've made themselves vulnerable to becoming one of the most notorious teams in the history of the National Hockey League. Going into this game 7, objectively, when you have the most wins in any regular season, when you have the most points of any regular season team, and you're on home ice in game 7 in the first round, and you have a chance to lose that, this Bruins team, and this is going to be fair too. This is fair criticism. If they find a way to lose this series after the season that they've had, after being up 3-1, and they lose this game 7, they will absolutely deserve every bashing that comes their way. the Adam Joneses of the world, the Mike Felgers, anybody who, and sorry to cross reference, but I'm going to do it because we're Boston and everybody knows who we're talking about. Everybody who's been critical of this team, and we all say, can we just see it happen before you bash them? Like, can we at least like? They will be justified. Nobody.
I don't want to see Adam Jones in the office. If goaltending is the reason why they lose the series, I'm just gonna quit.
what everybody says is, no matter how well the Bruins play in the regular season, no matter how many 60-goal scorers they have, which is just one in Pastrnak, like no matter how fun the regular season wins are, they always say, "I just don't trust them." And if the Bruins lose this game, I'm sorry, you can sit there and say Ullmark porked them. And he did in games 5 and 6. But over the course of 7 games, you cannot blame one guy. The defense has been atrocious outside of games 3 and 4. And that falls on everybody, the goalie included, but everybody else. And if they win game 7, I think it could be a good, obviously it's a good thing, but there's the adversity, right? That everybody said they didn't face all year. If you avoid a first round scare, you get through it, you shake off those cobwebs, you say, okay, Toronto or Tampa, like that's like, then you can get yourself going. Don't cut yourself off at the knees before this playoff series, this season can get started, because boy, this is going to be one hell of a predicament if they lose this game tomorrow night. Tomorrow night.
A few points there. So first off, if they lose, it's absolutely an all-time choke job in Bruins history, in NHL history, in Boston sports history, maybe even larger, just the entire sports history. Like you're an all-time regular season team. You're up 3-1 on a team that had to scratch and claw just to make the playoffs. Like that, and it's been so self-inflicted. Like it's not, yes, the Panthers are a good team, but it's not like fluky, like, oh, well, we got a bunch of injuries and, whatever. They've actually gotten guys back during the series. They've gotten healthier as the series has gone on. So it absolutely would be. And anyone who wants to rip them, like everyone else, either just avoid them or, accept that it's justified, because it will be. As far as, they can play well and still lose. In the scope of just one game, I can live with it. Like if they play their best game and Sergei Bobrovsky just has the game of his life, there's only so much you can do there. But I will come back to something that Andrew Raycroft said on EI this week, which he was talking about the 2004 first round when the Bruins were the 2 seed against 7th seed in Montreal, were up 3-1 and blew that series. And he said, it's not game 7 I regret, presumably because he felt like they played a pretty good game. He said it was game 5 I regret, when they ran off the ice 5-1 and just didn't seem like they were ready for that game and that chance to close out the series. That opened the door for that Montreal team. They came back and won the series. If you're the Bruins, just for one game, you could live with giving your best effort Sunday night and coming up short because Bobrovsky's unbelievable. What they can't live with, what they shouldn't be able to live with, is what has happened in games 5 and 6 with all these self-inflicted errors that have allowed it to go 7 games in the first place. That's what they'll look back on. It'll be
and game 2.
Yeah, in game 2. And that brings me to the last point, which is the desperation of the Panthers versus the Bruins and being more playoff ready. To me, I thought the Bruins learned that lesson in game 2. Like I thought that was the wake-up call of like, hey guys, it's the playoffs. This is different than the regular season. Wake up. I thought they got that message. I thought it sunk in because they played so much better in games 3 and 4. And that looked to me like a team that, all right, got the wake-up call they needed, figured it out, was ready to now play playoff hockey. I don't know what games 5 and 6 have been. To me, like that, the Panthers were the more desperate team down the stretch, and the Bruins didn't have anything to play for. To me, that's gone by games 5 and 6. You've played 4 games of playoff hockey. You're in the swing of it. You're in the series. I don't know what has caused these last 2 games and all these mistakes. So, yeah, it's all on the line for them. It's like you said, it can either be, all right, they overcame adversity, they survived the scare, and the run's back on. Let's get ready for the next round. or it is going to be regret that they are all going to have to live with for the rest of their lives if they blow this. Like
He's not wrong.
Let's kill.
If this is
I know,
Bergeron-
like,
the way
if this
you
is-
said that though.
if this
but
is Bergeron
it's
and
true.
Krejci's last run, Scott, like, I mean, imagine if that's how their careers ended.
And
So,
you hear from guys who've been through this. Like they all know you only get so many chances at this. I remember Marchand in 2019 talking about how much he regrets 2013 and how he thinks about that even more than 2011, even more than winning. Even if you have that experience, it doesn't mean that you're not gonna, lose a big game again. Like they didn't win in 2019, and there's no guarantee that they're gonna win tomorrow night just because they have good leadership and they have guys who have been here. Patrice Bergeron, this will be his 14th career Game 7, tied with Zdeno Chara for the most ever. Doesn't guarantee they're going to win it. Like this group has lost Game 7s before. They've lost them on home ice. So
Well, they had it on Nesson the other day. It was there's in the last 5 Game 7s they lost 3.
Yep.
And like what's again, it's just like this roster that Don Sweeney put together. If the Bruins lose this series, what nobody should say or second guess is, well, Don put together a losing roster. No, because let me tell you something. This roster is so deep and they have everything. They have skill, they have size, they have speed, they have physicality, they have leadership, they have experience, they have everything. And if this team goes out in the first round, and with all due respect to Matthew Tkachuk and Barkov and Reinhart and Sam Bennett and Brendan Montour and Ekblad, like those 5-6 guys, all due respect to them, if you go out there and this team, Patrice Bergeron's career potentially ends after this season at the hands of a washed-up Mark Stahl, a Nick Cousins, a Colin White, a Sam Bennett. Is Sam Bennett going to be the reason that the Boston Bruins become the most notorious team in the league's history? If this Florida Panthers team is the reason, then this Bruins team, shame on them. That's all I have to say. And the Bruins crowd tomorrow is going to be so nervous. God forbid if Florida scores the first goal.
Scott's not even going to be able to eat his popcorn. His stomach is going to be yawning and not.
It just shouldn't, like, and I hate to, like, what we haven't done enough of on this episode is praise Florida for their resilience and their desperation and their stick-to-itiveness. Because yes, the Bruins have been shooting themselves in the foot and they've been handing Florida opportunities. But to Florida's credit, they've been taking advantage of them. And they went down 3-1. Yes, they're absolutely over. Matthew Tkachuk is the entire series has been overplaying the whole, like, nobody thought we were going to win a game. Like they are playing up that underdog card. So you can bet your ass in the locker room before Game 7, that team is going to be like, boys, let's go make history. Let's go be that team to be on the right side of history. And the Bruins, on the other hand, are going to be, it's going to be a very nervous crowd, and it's going to be a very nervous Bruins team. Yes,
it better be a loud crowd.
Well, I'm sure
you've got to make home ice advantage at some point.
I guess the thing for me is, like, the Bruins' desperation level should absolutely match the Panthers because the both teams' seasons on the line. The question for me is, does this Bruins team know how to play desperate? Like, do they know how to execute when they're being desperate? You know what I mean?
So
Like,
far, the answer is no.
Well, they haven't had their season on the line. Florida has.
No, I'm saying through 2 out of 3 games. Yeah, you're right about that. But I wanted to this popped into my head a few minutes ago. Where this is still the same topic. Florida not only has clawed their way through the regular season to get that last spot, but they've also been in that position in this series, and they've proven to themselves that they can do it with their backs against the wall over and over and over again. So they're already in that mindset. Our backs against the wall. We're going to claw out of this. The Bruins have not been in that position all regular season, and this is the first time in the series that their back is against the wall. So there's just a lot going into it, and we're not psychics, obviously.
And maybe another under-discussed part of this going into the series was the Panthers weren't scared of the Bruins because they a couple things. One, they played them well in the regular season, and as much as I personally don't really think regular season matchups carry into the playoffs and mean a whole lot, it does at least give the Panthers something to latch on to and say, like, look, yeah, they were the best regular season team ever, but we played with them. We were right there. And then the other part of it is they were the President's Trophy winners last year, and they got swept in the second round. So, like, I can see them spinning that as, hey, winning the President's Trophy doesn't guarantee you anything. We learned that lesson last year. Maybe it's time for them to learn that lesson. So, the Panthers do deserve a ton of credit. Like, they haven't been afraid. They didn't roll over when they were down 3-1. Obviously, we focus on the Bruins side of it because we're a Bruins podcast. That's what we do. But yeah, it has been impressive by Florida, and if they pull it off, like, they'll have a spot in history as well. But unless they go on to win the cup, like, they won't be what's remembered. It'll be the fact that the Bruins collapsed and blew it.
Hey, to my defense and Bridget's defense, we wanted the Islanders. I didn't. No, I'm more so being tongue in cheek, but because Bridget and I didn't think the Bruins would lose to Florida, even if they played them. But I just saw. Did I see 7 games? I mean, not necessarily. I did predict 6, but I just thought, I don't know. I just saw that this Panthers team was a lot better on paper than what their final standing was in the regular season, and yeah, they did win a President's Trophy last year. They learned a hard lesson. You sub out Kachuk for Huberdeau, and Weegar leaves, and a couple other smaller pieces like Giroux, but he was they were already ahead of the rest of the league when they got Giroux last year, and he didn't do anything when he went to them. So this Panthers team, like, they were very good on paper. They just underachieved for the first half of the year and whatever. So
and they started peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
And yet it still should have been a 5-game series.
Well, coulda, shoulda, woulda. It hasn't been, right? You got to why are the Bruins making these mistakes? No one's literally, the word is unforced, right? No one's forcing them to do these things. Why are they caving under pressure of the lights? Are they, like, there's a reason for it. I don't know what it is. It could be a combination, but the fact of the matter is it hasn't been one mistake. It's been countless. And it's like, if the Bruins are as good as their record indicated, you shouldn't be making those. Like, you shouldn't be making those. So something's off with this Bruins team, and I don't know.
Well, it's like, my question is, where did the chemistry go? Right, the mistakes sometimes come from not knowing where your teammate is on the ice, like not being on the same page. Like, those are things that you had 82 games to work out. But when you make a lot of line changes at the end, and I understand Bergeron being out, Krejci being out, is part of that you have to try to work around. But it's like the chemistry went out the window at some point, and these mistakes pile up because of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. But then, like, there's still the ones that are just completely unexplainable. Like that Clifton pass in the neutral zone last night. I've rewatched that a couple times, and like, I still don't even know what he was going for. Like, I don't even know what he thought he saw or who he was trying to make that pass to. It never had a chance of being completed. And like, and he wasn't under pressure. There was nothing going on. It was just a totally unforced mistake. And as much as, like, you want to say, oh, maybe, there have definitely been miscommunications in this series. So, if you want to point to maybe guys moving around or whatever, but pretty much everyone has played with everyone for the most part. There's been a couple new combinations, but for the most part, like, everyone's played with everyone. There should be some level of comfort there. And they, like, I think of last game where there's that, I think it was Orlov and Coyle, I think, like, lost a battle, or no, Forbort and Coyle lost a battle on the boards, and the puck squirts out, but Sam Bennett ends up scoring from the slot. And neither, like, Forbort and Foligno both seem to expect the other one to be picking up Bennett, and neither one did, and he ends up wide open. And it's like, well, there should be chemistry between Forbort and Foligno. Like, those are two guys who have been playing all year. So, like, what's their excuse for a miscommunication? They've been on the ice together plenty this year. And those are just, like, structural things of just how they're supposed to play in zone. Like, that doesn't change from line to line or pairing to pairing. Like, their structure's the same. Who is supposed to be going where and picking up who? Like, that's that's consistent across the whole team, especially in the defensive zone. Different lines might have different options and abilities to be creative offensively, but defensively, like the structure is the structure, the system's the system. That it shouldn't really matter like who you're on the ice with. It's the same assignments across the board pretty much.
So personnel-wise, can I just clarify where we all stand going into Game 7? We're all on the same page. Swayman in for Ullmark, Frederic in for Foligno, and
Grizzlick back.
Grizzlick in for who? Forbert or Clifton?
Clifton.
I'm going Clifton just because of how bad he was.
But do you think that Clifton's one of those guys that bounces back after something like that? I kind of think he is.
I think he's more of a liability than Forbert.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fair based off Game 6. I mean,
yeah, especially coming off Game 6. Like going into Game 6, I was team put Clifton in over Forbert. I didn't think either one was especially good in Game 6, but Clifton was definitely the bigger problem. So I'm fine taking him out, and then either Orlov or Grizzlick goes on their offside. Probably Orlov because he's done that more. So yeah, my defense for Game 7 would line up Grizzlick, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo, Forbert, Orlov.
Okay. I hope one note on Carlo and Forbert. I hope they're really attentive in watching their PK tape, because on that game tying goal from Tkachuk, go to 5-5 in the third period, he had all the time in the world to just walk in and get his own rebound on a very basic play, good play, smart play. But Forbert and Carlo have like a combined wingspan of like 20 feet, and like not one of them like closed in on him. So maybe keep an eye on that guy in the goal line.
Yeah, that was really annoying because the first jam attempt, that's on the goalie. You let the goalie handle that one. The rebound, someone's stick has to be in there. Like that was bad. Yeah, you're right. Like neither one closes in. It's like how Tkachuk could have had a third whack if there was another rebound. Like there was way too much space there.
Yeah, that one I also will not put entirely on Ullmark. I didn't like the timing of that.
I still didn't like it from Ullmark's perspective either, though. Like those jam plays, you got to hold your ground and keep it out. Like he sent the rebound right back to Tkachuk's stick, and then he's not able to get to the other post. Like, so I still didn't like it for him either.
By the way, Bergeron had a save at one point where it got past Ullmark, and Bergeron stopped it on the goal line and saved it. I think in the second period. It was earlier in the game.
I know we've gone longer than usual. Could I just bring up one more thing that annoyed me last night? Just one more thing. So I understand last year Bruce Cassidy was potentially a little bit of a bad cop in the room, and it wore on some players, and that part of the reason that Jim Montgomery, aside from his hockey mind, let's not overlook that the Bruins hired him was for a culture change in the room, more positive reinforcement, more good cop, more, I'm going to massage your shoulders after a good play type coach, right? And I'm not saying Jim Montgomery has to change his stripes just to keep it to, Tiger references, since he's such a big Tiger fan. But after last night's game, one of the first things he said to the media was, "Oh, what a great hockey game that was. That's playoff hockey at its best, and what a great game that was." And I think he really meant that? No, I think that in his mind, he was very pissed off about how his team played, and he was trying to give off a positive, happy-go-lucky, like, let's not panic here. We're going home to home ice. We earned it all year, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But don't condescend everybody in the media and in the fans that are watching that interview by trying to trick us and deceive us into what a great hockey game. If you weren't a Bruins fan or a Panthers fan or a Bruins fan, objectively, yeah, fun game to watch for a neutral fan. Got it. But defensively, your team was atrocious. So I'm not telling you to go out there and go all Bruce Cassidy on them. And by the way, Bruce, I love you. Congrats on going to the second round, like Bridget said. But can you at least just be like, we need to be better. Like, it wasn't our greatest effort. We're gonna focus on addressing that and going into Game 7. Do you have to be like, what a great hockey game?
I feel like it almost comes from not knowing how to react in these situations because they haven't been in it, and also not knowing exactly what to do about some of the mistakes that happen. Like, I guess that's all you can say when you don't really, you don't like have the ability to put your finger on just like one thing or another, and that it's just kind of all coming at you so fast. What else do you say? I guess he hasn't been put in that situation in a press conference for most of the year. So this is different. This is different for him to handle as well in the post game.
Yeah.
And I know on Sunday, Bruce Cassidy is going to be sitting at his house in Vegas, just like Scott, just with the popcorn in hand and enjoying whatever he sees. And I don't know if he's rooting for or against the Bruins. I gotta imagine it's against for a lot of reasons. But yeah, no, he's relaxing right now. And his former team is kind of in a panic.
Yeah, and Bridget, to something you referenced earlier, like I don't think Jim Montgomery thought that was a great hockey game after the Kachuk goal where he's throwing his water bottle on the bench. He didn't seem to be having a good time then. So yeah, it was an odd tone, and I think it does stem from like him always trying to project that positive energy and the we're not panicking, but it still came off as odd. And there's been a couple times this year where like his tone is where he maybe doesn't come across the way that he means to, because like I don't think he was trying to sound like all bright and cheery and like, wow, that was just a wonderful night, but like it does kind of sound that way when you
I just
start
love
with
so much that I was entertained even though we lost.
I mean, Ullmark pissed me off too. Like after Game 5, Bridget, you mentioned, or maybe Scott, maybe it was you, but you mentioned like how after the game, I think it was you, Bridget. After the game, he was obviously it was a massive blunder. All eyes are on that play, cost him the game, blah blah blah. And somebody was like, how do you feel? How are you feeling? He's like, I'm good, thank you, thanks for asking. Which is like fine in that situation because it's one big play that he's trying to kind of poo and like shake off. But last night he's doing the same thing after giving up 6 goals, and he's like, I'm good, thank you, feeling good. It's like, dude, can you just like say you have to be better and just at least look like you're pissed? I know you're pissed.
Yeah, like at least Swayman goes, you just got to put it behind you, blah, blah, blah. Like, but you can tell it by his demeanor. He is mad at himself.
Well, it makes me feel like he's rattled. It makes me feel like he's overcompensating for how rattled he is. Whereas like, if you're like even keel and you're just like, and you take a little bit of accountability and you're like, yeah, I just got to be better. Like I need to be better next game. But like when you're going out of your way to give the perception that everything's okay, it makes me feel like everything's not okay and you're trying to overcompensate, and that makes me worry.
Well, and I will say like a lot of people have made the Tuukka Rask comparison in the sense of like they don't sound mad or concerned after bad losses or whatever, and almost a little too nonchalant. And I'll at least say this: Rask, when he had a bad game, he took responsibility for it. He was honest, and he would say like, "Yeah, like that was a bad goal for me to give up. I had a bad game. I have to be better." He would do that. It would go largely ignored by like sports radio in particular, but I was in a lot of those scrums where Tuukka Rask did that. He was also brutally honest and would sometimes blame his defense if it was the defense's fault. So he was just honest both ways. But for people who want to make that comparison, like Rask would at least take it on himself and say he had to be better. And you're right, like we haven't really heard it from Ullmark. Even as a member of the media, I don't really care. Like I don't mind how goalies react. They're weird people in general. So if this is what works for him, then so be it. But I absolutely understand why some fans might not like what they're hearing.
And by the way, this is consistent with how he's been since we met him. Like he likes to be sarcastic. He likes to give answers that you can't use, and you're like the quotes that you can't use because they're literally, he means the exact opposite. He's done that to us a few times. He's given me some sass in the past. So yeah, he was giving off major sass. Now I don't feel as bad that he gives me sass, because I saw him give so much worse sass after Game 6. But it can rub people the wrong way for sure. I don't like how he handled it. The funniest thing is my mom, she loves the goalie tandem. She loves, the hug after the game. She was so pissed off at Ullmark and the comments that he made after the game, like being dismissive, that she was like, I don't like him anymore. So like, I know doesn't probably realize what the perception is when you do stuff like that.
If it's genuine and he really just seems like he's all good, like shit happens, that's one thing. I feel like I said, I feel like he's overcompensating and trying to give off a perception. Like, that funny video that went viral like years ago of like the little like 7 or 8 year old kid and the reporter goes up to him with the microphone and she's like, do you miss your mom? And he's like, no, and he's laughing and then he starts crying. That's what Ullmark like is reminding me of, where it's like he's after these games and he's like, I'm good, thank you, feeling good. Yep. Why do you ask? Like after getting up 6 goals, and it's like I just feel like he's going out of his way to, and I think it's bothering him more than he's letting on, obviously. And I feel like sometimes it's like just like be honest, like tell just be honest and don't be so like it's okay to take accountability. No one's gonna crucify you for like looking upset after a game or just looking how you would normally look. Like you don't have to like put on a fake face for everybody. Like it doesn't matter to us. Like I don't know, just like grieve and move on. I don't know. Or get pissed.
I do think he thinks that he's getting the point across with his sarcasm, right? I
But
feel like he thinks he's getting
though?
the same point across, like that. Oh, obviously, like you guys already know the answer, so I'm just going to give you this sarcastic answer because you guys really know in your own mind, and you don't need to ask me what like to answer about it. Like we all saw it. Like I feel like it comes from that kind of a place where it's like I'm gonna give you a snarky, sarcastic answer because everybody knows what happened, and I don't feel like I want to talk about it.
That's fair. Maybe I'm reading a little too much into it. I guess I just hope that personally he's not like behind closed doors. I just hope he's not rattled. I don't care what it doesn't matter to me how the media feels, and it shouldn't matter to him how the media feels. Like
it doesn't matter to him.
I just don't want him to. I just want him personally when he goes home at night preparing for Game 7 to not be rattled. And I was just trying to figure out if him being overly positive after a clearly bad couple of games wasn't his way. It was
sarcastically positive, though.
Okay,
it was definitely sarcastically positive.
Okay, well then. Might be a moot point because I think we all want Swayman in Game 7, and like because God forbid if Ullmarks starts in Game 7 and gives up an early goal, like then what do you do?
You take him out. You make that switch as early as you need to.
100%. I agree with you. But don't put if you're gonna do it, just do it. Just get him in there to start the game. Don't even give yourself a tough decision to make.
It doesn't really seem to be in their DNA. Their DNA though, like they've been so hesitant to make a change in goal, and it's very surprising to me because they should have had total confidence in both goalies going into the playoffs, and their actions, like the way that they've handled this series. I wrote this in my column this morning. Like they've treated Ullmark like he's a true workhorse number 1 who doesn't have a capable backup. Like they've approached it almost the exact opposite of what the situation actually is, which is a historically great goalie tandem where, one is probably a little better than the other, but it's gonna be fascinating. Gonna be super interesting to see what they do.
Don't hang them out to dry.
So I'll ask you guys right now before we sign off: are we going to be previewing a second round series for the Bruins after Sunday night?
I already started writing something for between rounds, so I hope so.
Do you think that work will be for naught?
I might just have to throw that in the garbage. Do you
think you'll have to? What do you think, Bridget? You think they're gonna win?
I honestly, Brian, I couldn't tell you. It could go 3 overtimes, and everybody.
You have to make a pick.
Hey, people want to hear your gut instinct. Bridget, let me explain something. Right now, all the listeners, right now, you, me, and Scott, we're like flight attendants on an aircraft. As long as the flight attendants are still walking around passing out snacks, no one's gonna panic. So you need to give off the perception. Do you know how to land a plane,
Brian? Because I don't know how to land a plane.
All I know how to do is go like this and signal to the exits and pass out Cheez-Its. I'm not pretending to be the pilot. I'm just being a flight attendant so that the listeners can have some zen in them leading into this Game 7. If we panic, they're gonna panic, Bridget. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's like those masks are coming down from the top of the plane and we're all like trying to fasten them onto our faces or something.
Well, let's just hope you're not in
Yeah.
one of the emergency exits.
Yeah, I mean, I said I was feeling bad. I feel like the plane's going down.
Guys, come on.
Look,
Can't be
I
like
don't
that.
want that to happen. I want to keep covering this team. It's been a really fun team to cover.
What are the odds the Panthers win 3 games in Boston in a row? Something's gotta.
I've already said that about a few things, and I've been wrong, and now I just don't want to listen. Of all the reasons why this needs to go to another round, working with the people that we work with is the number one reason for me. So I don't have to deal with and it's not just going to be this year. Every year from now on will be, oh, well, they choked before, they're going to choke again. Oh, I don't want to deal with that. So.
Well, for what it's worth, I think the Bruins are still going to be playing until June at least. Obviously, if they lose, if they lose tomorrow night, burn the tape. I never said that, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I purposefully booked my vacation in August instead of June because I was like, I've booked a vacation in June before, and what happened? They were playing in the Stanley Cup in 2019. I was in Hawaii for most of it, and the Stanley Cup got brought to the office, and I didn't get to touch it. I'm still mad about that. So,
well, and I'll also say, Saturday morning, I feel bad if I have to pick right now. I hate to do it, but I'm picking a loss. But people should tune into Sunday Skate. Sunday, 10 a.m.
Sunday morning.
With me and Razor, maybe with 24 more hours, I'll feel better. We'll have to see.
Why is it a 6:30 start time? By the way, that's so random. Why not?
Yeah, it's good. I don't know, some TV thing because they also have the Avs Kraken game is 9:30. Maybe they didn't want that to be a 10 o'clock start. At least get some East Coast viewers or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
By the way,
Bruins fans are going to bed. If that's a loss, and they're not going to be watching no Kraken game.
Hey, honorable mention, by the way, to Jack Edwards for his goal call on Jake DeBrusk's shorthanded goal. That was an all-time goal call. I think it was
he just screamed.
Yeah, I don't even know if he said words.
Yeah, no, he sounded like, yeah, it was like a baby making sound. So I don't know what the hell that was, but we talked about enough bad things about Jack this year. That was a good Jack moment. That was funny. Unfortunately, the Bruins had to go and ruin it, and that wasn't the ultimate game-winning goal call, but that put that on the highlight reel. So anyway, all right.
Do you guys want to recreate that call? Do we all just want to scream?
You know something?
No, people already commented on our YouTube that I have a terrible voice or something. So
that's
I'm
not
gonna
nice.
refrain from screaming. Also, Brian has RBF apparently. I
guess I can just smile the entire time I'm not talking. I know what do they say? Like, don't you know you're on camera? It's like, listen, we've been doing the skate pod for 2 years. We just started YouTube. Like, I look.
And you should have seen what I looked like before we were on YouTube because I did not. I just came in like my robe and like no makeup and like a hat, and I looked like shit. But now I have to put makeup on for this, so you're welcome.
I'm gonna just do I'm gonna paint my face like Joaquin Phoenix in the Joker, so that people just think I'm always smiling at Scott when he's talking. I genuinely don't know what to do, and that's it. Like, if you guys are talking, that's the RBF is resting bitch face. That's what I understand.
Yeah, and usually it's me that I get told I have because I'm in the background of all the like Bruins videos, like looking like I don't know, like I hate life. But you want to know what though? Everybody likes Scott.
See, now that's not true because
actually no criticism ever.
I feel like it started with me being criticized, but now it has completely shifted to you guys. So I must have done something right. But
that's too likable.
I think people should keep that up. I encourage them to say very nice things about me and be mean to Brian and Bridget.
They couldn't see Scott because he was pixelated for 6 months.
That's also true.
Either.
They couldn't see his.
They didn't even know I was here, so that's why they weren't talking about it.
Like, oh my god, it's like who's that blurb just talking half the time? Anyway, keep the comments coming. We love them, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Bridget.
Don't make me delete any.
Yeah, she monitors them, so that's why Scott and I hear about them because she'll just text us these random things that make us laugh. But
thanks, guys.
We love all the listenership and viewership, of course. So anywho, Bridget, hand on the dial, finger on the dial. You guys have anything else you wanted to say? No.
Nope.
Okay. Well, fingers crossed that this isn't the last Skate Pod episode, at least talking about a Bruins series outside of the first round.
Yeah, I guess analyzing what they should do next is what
Mm-hmm.
don't let it be the last time.
No. So for all of you listening, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and enjoy your Sunday. Go Bruins. We will talk to you all very soon.